Welcome to the first season of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. I'm your host, Chris Dutchko. As a teacher of freshmen and one of our freshman mentor committee faculty advisors, I spend a lot of my school day helping students navigate the successful transition from middle school to the halls of Emmaus High School. The goal of this podcast is to give you the story of the ninth grade here at Emmaus High School through the people who live it daily, the students and staff. We will attempt to touch on the real issues and stories that ninth grade students face, ranging from academics to athletics to technical school, and just trying to find your way as one person in a community of approximately 2,700 students. We will also look to speak with some of the influential staff members who play a key part in a student's ninth grade year. It's the hope that future ninth grade students and their families can use the tips and insights provided here to begin making connections to their new school and learn more about the day-to-day lives of the students that they one day will become and realize from day one that ninth grade counts. You can learn more about this episode and all the episodes of Season 1 on the website, while you can also follow us on Twitter at EHSFMC or at Chris Dutchko, or the hashtag EHS9Counts. But before we jump into today's topic, let's thank our sponsor for this show, the East Penn Education Foundation. This podcast has been made possible through a $1,000 grant awarded to teachers like me each year who are attempting to do unique projects in the area of science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. The foundation supports programs that put learning in motion by giving students the tools they need to think actively in a complex and changing world. You can follow them on Facebook at East Penn Education Foundation, on Twitter at EPSD EdFound, or Instagram at EPSD Ed Foundation. Now on to the show. Between clubs, activities, sports, and socializing, sometimes it's hard to remember that the real focus of high school needs to be on the academics and the work students do in the classroom. In chatting with our guest today, you will see how two high-achieving ninth grade students balance their time in order to excel in some challenging classes. Both Megan Petrizzi and Ben Thomas have found that school life balance and are anxious to share their stories with you today. They discuss topics such as the hardest adjustments from middle school, managing the workload, getting involved in the school community, and those important tips to make your ninth grade year the best that it could be. Let's hear from Megan and Ben. Thanks, guys, for coming in. And let's do a little bit of introductions here. Our first two guests on the Ninth Grade Experience podcast, we have Megan Petrizzi.
Hello.
And we have Ben Thomas.
Hello.
Okay, so we have two ninth graders here in some pretty challenging classes, really involved in our school. And they are going to take a little bit of time here to tell you some things about their year, what they've gone through, maybe some tips for incoming ninth graders, and just what they've learned throughout the year here at Emmaus High School. So thanks for joining us, guys.
No problem.
Yep.
So the first question I'm going to ask, and either one of you can answer, the title of our podcast here is the Ninth Grade Experience. So it's now the middle of May. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your ninth grade experience?
I've had a pretty good experience so far overall in the school. I've enjoyed the difference between middle school and high school. It's a lot different. There's a lot more work, and you have to manage your time a lot better. Me playing two sports, I have very little time after school to get homework done, so you really have to use your study halls, use whatever time you can to get work done in school, so you don't have to do as much outside of school.
And you mentioned you play two sports. What are the two sports you play?
I play football and lacrosse.
Okay. So you have the fall and you have the spring.
Yeah.
Keeping you busy there. Nice winter off, but I'm sure you were training all winter too, right?
Yeah. Both sports mostly go year-round, so I don't really get a break, but...
So you've been a busy ninth grader. How about you, Megan? What have you been up to this year?
Yeah, I've been pretty busy. It's all about trying to keep track of your work. I play basketball year-round, not just for the school, so I don't really have a lot of time after school either, so you really have to take advantage of your study halls and not just kind of sit there and watch TV the whole time. It's very important that you're trying to get your work done during them.
So that's good. And we'll talk a little bit about this later, about taking advantage of time you have here at school to get work done. But I want to take you back, and Ben, you kind of talked about this a little bit. I want to take you back to May of last school year. You were in 8th grade, and what middle school were you in, Ben?
Lower Macungie.
And Megan?
And I was at Ire.
Okay, so we have both of our middle schools covered here. So we're getting ready. It's May of last year. You're getting ready to get out of middle school and looking forward to high school. Can you remember back to what either of you were thinking before the summer and going into the summer about what high school was going to be like?
I was really actually concerned about, well, the number one thing that you hear most freshmen say is about getting lost, and you think that the school is a lot bigger than it really is, but once you get here, it's really not as big as you think it will be. And I think that it looks kind of terrifying as you're that 8th grader, you know, when you go through your tour of the high school, but once you actually get here, you learn different ways to go to your classes, and it's not as bad as it seems. And it is a big adjustment just trying to figure out where you're going. And obviously, you know, you only get 5 minutes to go between classes. It's a lot different. You know, there were no bells in middle school, but once you get to high school, there's bells. So the first 2 weeks, the teachers aren't really, you know, they aren't really on top of it. So you don't really have to be that nervous, I guess you could say.
And how about you, Ben? What do you remember back from this time?
I remember I was like not really nervous. I was just kind of like going with the flow and see what's gonna happen. I definitely thought like it was gonna be like a challenging process to learn all the class courses, but as soon as after the first week, it's fine. I mean, definitely the most thing is you can't really like you can stop and talk to people in the hallway, but get to class. That's probably one of the biggest things.
So from what I'm hearing, it sounds like your hardest adjustment was just getting used to the schedule and the size of the building and working through that at the beginning of the year. Is that about right?
Yeah, it's a lot of getting used to. And I remember like the first 2 weeks I was late to like every class, but you kind of just get used to it because you learn different ways to go to your classes. Like the way that I went to my classes in the beginning of the school year is completely different to where I go now. There's a lot of different ways you can go to your classes, and especially using the courtyards is a big one. You definitely want to take advantage of the courtyards because if you have to go from the auditorium to English, that's like the worst one that you have to go to. You really want to use the courtyard because then you don't have to, there's a lot of like traffic in the hallways, so if you use the courtyards, you kind of avoid that.
And what room are you in for English?
581.
So just for, obviously you're listening to this, but the auditorium is on the exact opposite side of the school from room 581. If you were to guess, how long, if you were just walking there on a casual walk, how long do you think it would take you to get from one end to the other?
I don't even know. If you're just like casually walking, it would take probably around like 8 minutes, but you really have to run through.
It is really far. It is literally the furthest spot from one end of the school to the other, up 3 flights of steps, up in the corner of the 3rd floor. So it is really far away. So just getting used to that size there. So Ben, was there something that maybe after that first week you were kind of rolling with it? Was there something after that first week that kind of caught you off guard and maybe you weren't expecting that was a little bit challenging for you?
Yeah, definitely. Like when you're keeping up with your classes, like if you drop off for like a week, your grades will go down tremendously. And you gotta like keep up with what you're doing. Like you can't take a day off. And you definitely, like when I got to high school, I definitely had to change my perspective on like work. I had to like I used to like kind of just go through my homework, try to get done as fast as I can. But like when you get to high school, you have to make sure you're doing it because that's also helping you like study for what you're doing in class. Because like if you don't do your homework, then you come in the next day, you're not really gonna know what you're doing in class. And I definitely feel like the teachers help you with that, like giving you work that'll help you the next day in class. So that's something to keep up with. Also, going back to the grades. Like after like a little bit, you get used to like how you'll see how your grades will change. Like if you like do bad in a test, you can also bring it back up with doing like it's not just tests, it's also homework, everything. I feel like in middle school it's kind of like if you did bad in a test, your grades like automatically bad. But like in high school, like the teachers, it's kind of more even. So like if you don't do homework and you do good on tests, you're still not going to get that good of a grade. Like you have to do everything in the class possible.
And both Ben and Megan are in college prep level classes or higher. So, Megan, can you talk to us a little bit about what you see out of your classes, the workload, and maybe what you were experiencing at the middle school, and then you came to the high school, and then you're in college prep level. You're in the biology honors class, which is traditionally one of the more difficult classes here at Emmaus High School. Can you just give us a little bit about what is your day like, and what were you expecting for the level of work in your classes, and what has it been like?
Yeah, it's definitely been, it's kind of hard to find the balance between doing your schoolwork and playing a sport at the same time. And I definitely got a lot more work in the biology honors class than I thought it was going to be. But you kind of like get used to it. With an honors class, they kind of expect you to kind of not necessarily just teach it to yourself, but they expect you to be more responsible of a student. And, you know, they're going to give you a packet and it's going to have a reading to go along with it. And you're going to have to kind of teach it to yourself a little bit. So it's a lot of taking notes. You have to be very good at taking notes in those type of classes because it's a lot of lecturing. It's not really, you know, when you were in middle school and you had your science classes, you know, you'd work through your worksheet with the teacher and stuff. There wasn't as much lecturing. When the thing with bio that's different is it's almost all lecturing, and you basically have to be really good at note taking because that's going to be your main source of studying is the notes that you take during class. And that's the one thing you have to get really good at in the beginning of the year. And if you get really good at taking notes, it'll also help you with all your other classes. That's the other thing I've noticed is I've gotten a lot better at note taking with biology, and it's helped me with my other classes. But I think that overall, it's not as bad as some people make it out to be. If you stay on top of your work and you really focus on getting a good grade in that class, and you get a lot of homework grades more than test grades. I mean, you get about maybe 4 or 5 big tests a marking period, but you can have up to 15, 20 homework assignments that go into home access. And so it's really, you really have to take care of, you know, doing your assignments and make sure you get all your homework grades in, because if you miss a homework grade, that can really hurt your grade more necessarily than, say, you get a really good grade in a test, but you don't do your homework assignments for the entire marking period. You're not going to get a good grade in the class because homework still affects your grade more than people think it will.
You talked about note-taking strategies. We're giving tips for ninth graders as well too near the end. But was there one thing that you learned about note-taking or a strategy, or what was it that you picked up on and you said you took it to other classes with you? What was that? Was there something that you were able to now take and something specific that you can give to the listeners about what you did for note-taking?
Yeah, what I kind of do is I actually type my notes. I don't really write them anymore because now that we have the Chromebooks, it's just easier and everything saves automatically. You don't have to worry about losing your notes. And what I kind of do is, like, when they go through different topics, I'll put, like, a header. And then I just put kind of bullet points, like, under it. And, like, if I have a definition, I'll highlight my definition and kind of just go through my notes like that because it's just easier. And then when it comes to, like, bullet pointing, you really have to pick out the most important information because they'll bring up, like, entire slides full of information. And I still see some kids that will go through and they'll type the entire slide down in your notes. But that's not really helping you with your notes. You kind of have to put it in your own words to where you understand it because the way that it says on the slide, you may not quite understand it. So you have to put it in your own words and kind of just, you have to summarize what's on the screen, not necessarily typing down the entire page worth of notes.
Yeah,
it's not going to help.
And that's something that I teach freshmen as well too, and that's something we always tell them to, like, not copy the entire slide because they have access to the entire slide. But you did mention something that I actually did not have down originally, but I think it's kind of interesting. So this is the first year that we have had Chromebooks for all the students one-to-one. So Ben, what has your experience been with your Chromebook? Have you been able to use it? Have you noticed any benefits from it? So what has that been like to have that this year?
Yeah, for sure. I've definitely benefited from it because I use that in mostly all my classes. And I feel like going off on note-taking, it's kind of like you want to take notes of what you need to know. Not like most of the kids will copy down the whole thing, but you don't really need to know. Like, some kids already know something and they still copy it down. Like, copy what you need to know. And I feel like the teachers do, like, a really good job of, like, how you learn. They kind of, like, do it to everyone. Like, they kind of, like, split it up. If you like visual learning, like, there'll be parts of visual learning, there'll be all other parts of learning. which I feel like definitely helps everyone in the class like improve. And then the Chromebooks, I just like using it at home. It's easier to type papers up. I feel like most of the kids in our school like don't really have access to like computers and like at home, so I feel like it definitely benefits like the ninth grade class using them.
Megan, anything you wanted to add about your first year with the Chromebooks here?
Yeah, I really like having the Chromebooks, and plus it kind of cuts down all the paper that like we have to carry around. So I only have one folder now because basically everything they give us is on the Chromebook. That's where Google Classroom really comes in here, is everything that we really do anymore. They post the worksheet on Google Classroom through Google Doc, and we type right on the document, and it makes everything a lot easier to turn things in because all you have to do is hit the turn in button. You don't have to worry about losing assignments. The only class that we really get worksheets in anymore, at least for me, is in math, and even then we use something called Cami, where it's like we can do all our math problems on the computer. And I think it's really a useful tool because we were already using the Chromebooks a lot last year as it was, and we couldn't bring them home with us. So if you didn't have a Chromebook at home, you couldn't really do your assignments. Like, you couldn't really type anything up necessarily. And back to what Ben said, I didn't have my own Chromebook, and so trying to do everything on an iPad isn't really
Yeah, it's
useful.
a lot more difficult,
Yeah, and so it's very helpful to have them. But, also comes back to the responsibility thing, is taking care of your Chromebook. There's been a number of kids that have broken them this year. You really have to take care of them. That's why you need to keep them in your backpack when you're going between classes, because I've seen kids drop them down the stairs. And,
oh, man.
Yeah. And, you need to be careful with the water bottles, not trying to drown your Chromebook, because I've also seen that. But as long as you take care of it, you won't really have to run into any problems there. And so I really think it is a useful tool, and it's definitely helped me with better grades, honestly, this year, because I can keep track of all my assignments a lot more organized.
Awesome. All right, so we talked about your classes. There's one thing that I think both of you have in common, too, especially in addition to your college prep level classes. You're both in a language. Megan, you're taking French. Ben, you're taking Spanish. I'm not going to put you on the spot and ask you to say anything in either of the languages, but what is taking a language? Did you take a language at the middle school level? And if you did, what have you noticed about the progression from the middle school level to the high school level in your language?
I took a language in 8th grade. I took Spanish, but I didn't do too well. I feel like in high school, like, the teachers kind of just give it to you, and you have to really study if you want to do well in the class. Like 8th grade, they kind of like, oh, here's what you need to know, and they kind of like go through it in class, and you don't really do anything outside of class. But I feel like when you get to the high school, like, you have to study outside of class, make sure you keep up with the class, because if you like fall behind, and like if you like get back in the class, and you have to catch up, and it's really hard to do that with a language that you're just learning. But I feel like Spanish is it's one of my easier classes this year because I just like keep up with it. That's one of the biggest things.
I took French when I was in middle school, and at least the way it is for French is when you're in the 8th grade taking French, it's a lot of learning the vocab and the different words that you use. When you get to the high school and you move on to like French 2, French 3, it's a lot more about speaking it necessarily.
Okay.
So we don't really do as much of, they give you a list of vocab and you have to learn it. It's a lot more of, learning how to write it, learning how to speak sentences with it. I haven't really gotten a lot of vocab this year. It's kind of taking the vocab that you learned last year, which is why it's very important that when you do get vocab that you learn it and that you memorize it, because you're not going to go back to a lesson where it's like, okay, what does this mean? Like, you're supposed to know it. When it comes to conjugating things, you're supposed to know it. So that's when it comes back to note taking. You really have to be careful when you take your notes, and definitely save your notes, because I saved all my notes from 8th grade, and it's definitely helped me a lot more in French too, because now I don't have to retake all those notes. I already have them. And say I would forget something, I have it in my notes, so I don't have to worry about having to look it up on Google or something, because I already know what it is.
Awesome. So both of you have talked a lot in our conversation about studying, and both of you have multiple study halls throughout the day. And as a teacher here at the high school, I can walk past study halls and I see a lot of kids that are not studying in study halls. But when I was speaking to you guys before we started recording, you both said that you use your study halls pretty efficiently. So can you just describe to the listeners, what do you do in your study halls? And I know the easy answer is study, but what is it that how do you use that time effectively? You guys both talked about being so busy after school with all your activities, but so how do you use the time during study halls to manage all that workload that you guys have been talking about?
Yeah, I'm very busy after school, and so when it comes to my study halls, I really take advantage of them. So it's kind of hard when you're in the auditorium, obviously, since there is no desk, and unfortunately both my study halls in the auditorium. So it's kind of, that's why I use my Chromebook a lot of the time, because, I don't have to worry about having to necessarily write that much. But, I'll put my earbuds in and I'll listen to music and I'll just get my assignments done, because if I don't have enough time to do it after school, or if I need to work ahead because I have something after school, I kind of can just sit there and fill out a worksheet. And there is some distractions that you kind of have to you become used to it, because there are a lot of kids that don't take advantage of their study halls because they take it as kind of a break, but you can't really see your study halls as a break from school, because that's kind of what lunch is for. But if you take every study hall and you take a break from the actual school day, you won't get as much accomplished, and you're just going to have more homework. And for someone that doesn't have a lot of time to do homework after school, it's very important that you try and get all your assignments done in study halls. And that's been very useful for me, especially during basketball season, where, I go right after school and I have basketball till 9:30. I'm not going to want to come in and have to do 3 hours of homework. You're going to want to have to do them in your study halls. And it's kind of hard. I get what people say when it's like kind of hard to write like stuff down when you're in the auditorium, but trying to get all your assignments done there on the computer and stuff is very useful.
And then your study halls are all in the auditorium too. For the most part, I know we're switching around a little bit here at the end of the school year, but how have you adjusted to having study halls in an auditorium setting?
I just try to get done what I can, I have a lot of math homework because I'm in a double block math period, which definitely adds a lot. I try to get everything that I know that I'd really not going to want to do later at night done in school. So, if I have an essay to type up, I'd rather try to get most of that done in school than at 10:30 at night try to type however many pages up. I also feel like if the kids that don't use their study halls, they kind of just they're just wasting time in their day, because if you get work done and then you don't have to do anything after school, when you come home from a sport, if you're playing whatever, or you're in a club, you're going to be exhausted from doing whatever you just did, and you're really not going to put your best work in. So when you're in the school day, and you're focused throughout the whole school day, you can put the best work in study halls.
Awesome. So 2 more questions. One, you guys have talked a lot about your involvement in athletics. Can you guys just explain or talk about what has that involvement done for you as a freshman? You have this large school of 2,700 people. You guys have come in and you've become involved in your athletics and other things right away. What has that meant to your transition here to Emmaus?
I think for me, it's definitely made it easier. I played freshman basketball for the high school as an 8th grader, so I kind of already knew some of my teammates go here, so transitioning over was a little bit easier because I already knew some people. And really getting involved, it exposes you to learning to do other things and getting to talk to different people, because when you first get here, you're not going to see all your friends at middle school. You really have to just put yourself out there and just learn to be friends with new people, because the people you're friends with right now, you're going to gain so many more friends next year that, getting involved in a club or a sport is very useful with that. And, when you do a sport, you kind of get to know the school a little bit better. For me, I spent so much time here after school doing my sport, and it helps you just transition getting to know different people, because when you play on a sports team, they're already going to be your friends, and just seeing them around in the hallway, they can help you, if you get lost or something, they can help you find out where you're going. And getting involved in the school is just really helpful, And I think that it's very important that you at least try to join a club or a sport like during your freshman year, because a lot of people say that they don't really need to get involved in their freshman year because they just want to come in, get used to the layout of everything. But if you play it out like that, you're going to find that it's actually harder to do that than if you were to get involved in the school.
How about you, Ben? You got this fall, you got the spring covered.
Yeah.
You're training in the winter. What has it meant for you to be involved in all these different activities?
Yeah, I definitely feel like it helps you like kind of find your like group of friends, and find like who like you're gonna want to hang out with outside of school, inside of school, and I definitely feel like it kind of like gives you something to say that you belong to. Like for the kids that don't do anything, like they don't really have anything to say. But like me, I can go around Emmaus and say, yeah, I'm part of the football team, and be like proud of that. And I definitely feel like you get to know coaches that'll change your life. Like some of my high school coaches now, like they've already made an impact on me. And I feel like if you're involved with sports all 4 years of your career, you can also like meet tons of new people. Like I came in as a freshman and I got moved up to varsity right away, so I was like good friends with all the seniors on the team, and they respected me like very wellly. And I also feel like when you're playing a sport, like you like feel like you're like, I don't know how to say it, but like you feel like you're kind of like part of the school. And you feel like you're more attached to the school than just, I just go to Emmaus High School and don't do anything.
Gotcha. Cool. That's awesome. So we're on to our last question here. You guys have been so great, and thank you for taking the time to come out and talk to us here today. So here's the last question. You guys have given a ton of advice throughout this whole recording. So maybe something different, maybe one of those little hidden things or things that you kind of learned. Maybe you learned it in January, or maybe you learned it in October or whatever. But what is one piece of advice for incoming ninth graders that you can tell them, like, hey, it's going to be okay? We're obviously talking here in May. You guys have been successful. But what is that one thing that if you had to tell somebody to make their ninth grade year better, what would it be?
I would just say don't be afraid to put yourself out there and take risks, because that's kind of, when you become a freshman, it's all about trying to figure out what your path for life's going to be, and just trying to figure out what you're going to do. You obviously are not going to know what you want to do as a freshman, but it's very important that you work on taking classes that you're actually interested in, not just because, the school says that you should, but, you have to take a science class. Take a science class so you're actually going to be interested in taking, not just go to the class just because you think that you have to. And, definitely take advantage of things like a bunch of kids say when they first become freshmen, I'm not going to have time to go to my locker. Yeah, that might be true for the first month while you're getting used to school, but once you kind of get used to it, and it'll take about, a month maybe. For me, it was a little less than a month. But, take advantage of your locker. Don't carry 6 notebooks, 7 folders, and your laptop around school all day. You have time to go to your lockers, and you will find time. You're going to find time to go to find different ways to go to your classes. Like I said before, the way I'm going to my classes now is not how I did in the beginning of the year. And just really stay on top of your work. I think that's kind of the most important thing, is don't fall behind. And if you do fall behind, we have Flex Wednesday, which is kind of the period where if you need help from a teacher, you can go get that. And you really need to take advantage of that time along with your study halls. And just trying to, you don't have to worry about kind of fitting in necessarily, because you just have to kind of find your group, and you're going to anyway. So it's very important that, goes back to the note taking, doing your homework, because almost every homework turns into a grade. So, you don't do a homework assignment, you're not going to get that grade for it, and you need to make sure that you're staying on top of that. And if you are struggling, we have tutors, we have the learning lab. Like I said before, you can go into your teachers, and honestly, your peers are very useful too. I mean, I can go to my peers, like if I need help with an assignment, I can get help. And we have a lot of online resources too with our Chromebooks, and you want to make sure that you take advantage of things like that. we have, when we were writing our research papers and stuff, that's a big thing as ninth graders, writing the research paper. We have so many online resources like Noodle Tools, and you want to make sure you take advantage of Quizlet. The school really provides you with a lot of different resources that you don't really find out until you're a freshman. There are so many things that I was exposed to this year that I did not know was a thing back in 8th grade.
Yeah.
And it's a lot more useful. It's made everything a lot easier. And if you really take advantage of those resources, it might take longer at first, but by the end of the year, it makes completing your assignments so much easier.
Ben, Megan put a lot out there. Maybe she left a little bit for you to kind of talk about, but what do you got? What do you think?
I definitely feel like just be yourself. Like kids in high school try to be someone else that they're not. And like if you're just yourself, like you'll find other people that are like you and you'll become friends with them. But if you like try to be someone else that you're not, like what's the point? And then I also feel like definitely what Megan said, keep up with your work. That's the biggest thing, and use your study halls.
So, once again, thanks to Ben Thomas and Megan Petrizzi here for talking about their 9th grade year. We're glad to have you guys be part of our Emmaus High School community, and we're glad that you were able to share your 9th grade experience. So thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.